Well, the Minerals Council of New South Wales CEO Stephen Galilee says he's aware of these claims, that he's not sure if the union or the McKell Institute are comparing apples with apples in the mining job stakes. He says the labour market is very tight and all mining employees are in a good bargaining position when it comes to wages.
Well, we're currently operating across the New South Wales mining industry in a very tight labour market. And wages and salaries have probably never been higher than they are right now. And there is very strong competition between our member companies to meet the requirements of their operational workforces. We've seen overall job numbers, including contractors and direct employment across the coal sector in particular, at some of its highest levels in a decade, at over 30,000, with the vast majority of those being full-time workers. And the vast majority of them are enjoying very high wages and good working conditions. I have a lot of time, and the industry works very closely with our workforce unions and their representatives to ensure workforce safety in particular, and across a range of other measures. And I do appreciate the sentiment that they're expressing in relation to these issues, but it's pretty clear that this report has been released during a federal election campaign to time it in relation to the Labor Party's campaign on the ground, and that's fine. They're entitled to do that. But the facts as we see it don't support some of the claims that are being made about the working conditions that are being experienced. Our overall wages that have been paid in the Hunter over the past 2 years in particular have remained steady at over $1.5 billion in total, and the job numbers have increased only slightly. So we're seeing a very good wages and salaries being paid. We're seeing a record number of jobs across the sector, and the proportion of those jobs that are full-time compared to contractors has remained relatively stable over the past decade.
But they claim that, in fact, it's like $235 million less in wages going out in the Hunter. What's your response to that?
Well, the amount of direct spending by our member companies in the Hunter over the past few years has been over $6 billion. And around $1.5 to $1.6 billion of that has been on wages and salaries. And those numbers have remained relatively steady. While the job numbers have increased, they've only increased slightly. And as I said earlier, our market at the moment is very, very tight. Our companies, and I'm sure the union will acknowledge this, our companies are working very hard every day to attract the right people to the industry to meet the workforce requirements, an increasingly skilled workforce requirement that we have.
But the unions are saying that, there are many cases of people getting paid about half what it is, the same worker is doing the same job, getting paid half. That doesn't pass the pub test. That's fair enough, isn't it? They should be getting the same wages, shouldn't they?
Well, you'd have to look at the individual examples that they are using to make that claim, and whether or not the relevant examples are equivalent. I don't know whether they are or not. I mean, I'm aware of the claims that are being made. I would just reiterate that our industry workforce is very well paid, particularly compared to other industries, and we are desperately looking for skilled people to fill vacant positions today. If people are considering their options right now, I would encourage them to consider mining as a possible career, and if they're working in other industries as well, I would encourage them to consider how they could translate those skills into a very highly paid sector that has a lot to offer.
Stephen Galilee, who's the CEO of the Minerals Council of New South Wales.